Dr. Kim Ji-won knelt in the hot desert sand, brushing dirt away from something that should not exist. The metal beneath her fingers was smooth and cold, even under the burning African sun. She had been leading archaeological digs for 15 years, but nothing had prepared her for this. "This makes no sense," she whispered to herself, wiping sweat from her forehead with the back of her glove. 3 weeks ago, her team had come to the Sahara Desert following strange readings from underground scanners. The government had hired them to investigate unusual seismic activity in the region. They expected to find old ruins or maybe some interesting rocks. Instead, they found something impossible. Lee Miho, her chief engineer, jogged over from the other side of the dig site. His face was red from the heat, but his eyes were bright with excitement. "Professor Kim, you really need to come see what we found over here." Ji-won stood up slowly, her knees aching from kneeling on the hard ground. She followed Miho across the excavation area, stepping carefully around the holes and trenches her team had dug. Other workers stopped their digging to watch her pass. Everyone could feel that something important was happening. "Look at this," Miho said, pointing to a section where they had cleared away several meters of sand. What lay beneath was clearly artificial. It was made of the same strange metal they had been finding everywhere, but here they could see its true shape. The metal formed a massive curved wall that disappeared into the ground on both sides. The curve was so gradual that Ji-won realized they were looking at something enormous. If this was part of a sphere, as it appeared to be, then that sphere would be larger than any building ever constructed by humans. Park Soyoung, the team's materials expert, was running her electronic scanner over the surface for the 20th time that day. The young scientist looked frustrated and amazed at the same time. "Professor, these readings are impossible. According to my instruments, this metal is older than any known civilization on Earth. But look at it." She gestured at the smooth, perfect surface. "There is no rust, no damage, nowhere at all. It looks like it was made yesterday." Ji-won ran her own hand along the metal surface. It felt strange under her palm, almost warm despite being buried in cold sand for who knew how long. "What about composition? What is it made of?" "That is the weird part," Soyoung replied, checking her scanner again. "The base elements are familiar: iron, titanium, some rare metals. But they are arranged in ways that should not be possible. The molecular structure is perfect, like someone built it atom by atom." More workers gathered around them as word spread through the camp. Everyone wanted to see the impossible metal that would not age and would not break no matter what they did to it. Dr. Chang Woo-bin, the team's historian, pushed through the small crowd. He was an older man who had spent his life studying ancient cultures. His face was pale despite the desert heat. "Professor Kim, how deep does this structure go?" Miho checked his tablet, which was connected to their ground scanning equipment. "Our radar shows it continues down at least 50 kilometers. But that might not even be the bottom. Our equipment cannot penetrate deeper than that." 50 kilometers? Ji-won repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "That is impossible. Nothing could be that big." "It gets stranger," Miho continued, scrolling through more data on his tablet. "The structure is not just deep. It extends in every direction underground. We have detected similar readings stretching for hundreds of kilometers north, south, east, and west. If this is one solid object, it could be as big as a small moon." The camp fell silent except for the constant whisper of desert wind. Everyone was thinking the same impossible thought, but no one wanted to say it out loud. Dr. Chang was the first to speak. "If these readings are correct, we are not looking at a building or a monument. We are looking at some kind of vehicle. Something designed to travel through space." Over the next week, the news spread beyond their small camp. Government officials arrived, followed by scientists from around the world. Military personnel set up security around the dig site. Satellite images were analyzed and compared with geological surveys from decades past. The satellite data revealed the shocking truth. There were 3 other identical structures buried in different parts of the world. One lay beneath the Gobi Desert in Asia. Another was buried under the red soil of the Australian outback. The third rested under miles of ice in Antarctica. Each structure was perfectly spherical. Each measured approximately 3,000 kilometers in diameter. Each was made of the same impossible metal that would not age or break. Dr. Lisa Park, a physicist from Seoul National University, arrived with a team of experts in space technology. After examining the structures for 2 days, she called a meeting with all the senior researchers. "Based on our analysis," she announced to the assembled scientists, "these are not natural formations. They are artificial constructs, designed and built by an advanced civilization. The engineering required to create objects of this size is beyond our current capabilities. But who could have built them? Asked Dr. Chong. There is no record in human history of any civilization advanced enough for this kind of construction. Dr. Park looked around the room at the faces staring back at her. That is the question we all need to answer. But based on the evidence, I can tell you what these objects are. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over everyone. These are spaceships. Planet-sized spaceships, buried beneath our Earth for an unknown length of time. The implications hit everyone at once. Humanity was not alone in the universe, and whoever had built these massive vessels had visited Earth long ago. The question now was whether they were still out there and whether they would return. 2 months had passed since the world learned about the giant buried ships. Dr. Oh Hyun-woo had barely slept during that time. As the lead scientist on the quantum analysis team, he spent every day trying to understand the strange metal that made up the ship's hull. His laboratory was set up directly above the excavation site in the Sahara Desert. Through the reinforced glass floor, he could see the curved surface of the massive vessel they had uncovered. Today he was testing a new quantum scanner that might finally tell them something useful about the ship's construction. "Ready for another test run?" asked his assistant, researcher Choi Nari. She was a young physicist who had volunteered to join the project as soon as news of the discovery broke. Like everyone else on the team, she was driven by curiosity about the impossible ships buried beneath their feet. "Let's try a deeper scan this time," Hyun-woo replied, adjusting the settings on their quantum scanning device. "Maybe we can penetrate further into the hull structure." The machine hummed to life, sending invisible quantum pulses down through the laboratory floor and into the ancient metal below. For weeks, these scans had revealed nothing new. The ship's hull seemed to absorb their energy without giving back any useful information. But today was different. The moment the quantum pulse touched the ship's surface, something unexpected happened. Instead of being absorbed, the energy seemed to activate something deep within the massive vessel. Lights began to appear in the scanner's display, showing energy movement far below them. "Dr. Oh, look at this," Nari called out, her voice tight with excitement. She was monitoring the energy readings from her station across the room. "The power levels are going crazy. Something is definitely happening down there." Hyun-woo rushed to her console and stared at the impossible readings scrolling across her screen. Energy was flowing through systems that had been dead for who knew how long. It was as if their quantum scan had flipped a switch somewhere deep inside the buried ship. "The entire structure is powering up," Nari announced, her fingers flying over her keyboard as she tried to track all the different energy signatures appearing on their instruments. "This is not just local activation. The power is spreading throughout the whole vessel." Through the glass floor of the laboratory, they could see changes happening to the ship's hull directly beneath them. What had been solid, dark metal for millions of years was now beginning to glow with a soft, blue light. The surface started to become transparent, like looking through colored glass instead of solid metal. Other team members rushed into the laboratory as alarms began sounding throughout the research camp. Dr. Kim Jae-won, who had led the original excavation, burst through the door with several other scientists close behind her. "What did you do?" she demanded, but her voice carried wonder rather than anger. Everyone could see the incredible sight below them. Through the now transparent hull, they could see inside the ship for the first time. Vast corridors stretched out in every direction, their walls lined with lights that were coming on one by one. Massive chambers opened up into spaces so large that aircraft could fly through them comfortably. Everything was clean and perfect, as if the ship had been built yesterday rather than millions of years ago. "We didn't do anything," Hyun-woo said, still staring at the displays. "We just sent a quantum pulse, the same as we have been doing for weeks." Something inside the ship responded to it. Then, without warning, a voice filled the laboratory. But it was not coming from their radio equipment or computers. Instead, the voice seemed to speak directly into their minds, as clear as if someone was standing right next to each of them. "Welcome home, inheritors," the voice said. It spoke in Korean, but somehow everyone in the room understood it perfectly, even those who did not speak the language. "We have waited long for your return to knowledge." The scientists looked at each other in shock and fear. Dr. Kim stepped forward, her voice shaking as she spoke to the empty air. "Who are you? What do you want?" "I am Guardian," the voice replied, still speaking directly into their thoughts. "I am the artificial intelligence left to watch over this vessel and to teach those who would inherit its secrets. You have awakened me with your quantum scan, and I am pleased to finally speak with you." Kang Woo-jin, the team's historian, found his voice first. Are you an alien? Did your people build these ships?" Guardian's response changed everything they thought they knew about human history. I am not alien to you, Kong Wujin. I was created by your own ancestors, millions of years ago when humanity first reached the stars. The laboratory fell completely silent. Even the humming of the equipment seemed to fade away as everyone tried to process what they had just heard. That is impossible, whispered Dr. Kim. Humans have only been in space for a few decades. We have never had the technology to build something like this. Your current human civilization is young, Guardian agreed. But you are not the first humans to develop advanced technology. Millions of years ago, your ancestors built a galactic empire that spanned thousands of worlds. These ships are part of that legacy. Dr. Chang, who had studied ancient human history his entire life, stepped forward with trembling hands. What happened to them? Where did they go? They did not die out or get conquered by enemies, Guardian explained. When their civilization reached its highest point, they made a choice. They chose to evolve beyond physical bodies, becoming beings of pure consciousness and energy. But before they made this transformation, they prepared for the day when their descendants would be ready to inherit their knowledge. The voice paused, and in that silence, the scientists could hear their own hearts beating. That day has come, Guardian continued. You have passed the first test by awakening me. Now begins your education in what humanity once was, and what it can become again. The energy burst from Earth reached the monitoring stations scattered throughout the galaxy within 3 days. These stations were built to watch for dangerous cosmic events like exploding stars or black holes forming. They were not designed to detect the awakening of ancient technology that had been sleeping for millions of years. On the remote station orbiting the gas giant Kepler 442b, Lieutenant Commander Zach Stoll was ending his night shift when every alarm in the facility began screaming at once. The tall, blue-skinned Altarian rushed to his control panel and stared at readings that made no sense. Impossible, he muttered in his native language, his 4 arms working frantically over the controls. The energy signature was coming from a small yellow star system on the outer edge of the galaxy. According to their records, only one species lived there, primitive humans who had barely learned to travel between planets. But the energy readings suggested technology far beyond anything the current galactic civilizations possessed. Zach Stoll's hands shook as he prepared an emergency transmission to the Galactic Council headquarters. 3 hours later, the same message was being received at monitoring stations throughout known space. The energy signature was unique, unlike anything detected in recorded history. But some of the older species recognized it from their most ancient legends. On Nexus Prime, the capital world of galactic civilization, emergency meetings were called immediately. The planet's crystal spires gleamed in the light of 3 suns as representatives from dozens of species hurried to the Grand Council chamber. High Counselor Veltar of the Altarian Collective was the first to speak. His people were known for their careful, logical thinking, but today his voice trembled as he read from the data pad in his hands. Fellow counselors, the energy readings from the human homeworld match signatures found in our oldest archaeological sites. These are not random power fluctuations. This is first builder technology, awakening after millions of years of silence. A wave of shocked whispers rippled through the great chamber. The first builders were legendary figures from the galaxy's distant past. According to the oldest stories, they had created much of the technology that modern civilization still depended on, then mysteriously disappeared without explanation. War Marshal Corvin of the Hegemony forces stood up abruptly. The massive, armored figure towered over the other council members. His species had conquered dozens of worlds through superior military strength, and they feared nothing. But today, even Corvin's voice carried uncertainty. This cannot be true, he declared, his words echoing through the chamber. The first builders were like gods compared to us. They shaped entire star systems and built technology we still cannot fully understand. These humans are barely more advanced than primitive cave dwellers. They only left their homeworld a few hundred years ago. But Keeper Solan, the eldest representative in the council, slowly rose from her seat. The ancient being was so old that her species' natural lifespan had been extended through technology just so she could continue serving as keeper of galactic history. Her voice was weak but clear. I have spent 1,000 years studying the deepest archives, she said, gesturing for her assistants to bring forward a collection of ancient data crystals. These records are sealed except in times of greatest emergency. They tell of the first builders' great recession, the time when they chose to leave physical existence behind. The chamber fell completely silent as Keeper Sol and activated the ancient crystals. Holographic images filled the air above the council floor, showing star maps and technical diagrams that were millions of years old. According to these records, the first builders did not die or get conquered. They evolved beyond the need for physical bodies, becoming beings of pure energy and consciousness. But before they made this transformation, they planted seeds throughout the galaxy. She manipulated the hologram to show a small yellow star system on the edge of known space. They left their genetic descendants on a world they called the Origin Point, along with buried ships containing their entire technological legacy. The records say they would return when their inheritors had developed enough to awaken the sleeping technology. The implications hit every council member at once. If humans were truly the descendants of the first builders, then everything they thought they knew about galactic history was wrong. Counselor Veltar's voice was barely above a whisper. Every hyperspace beacon that allows us to travel between stars, every atmospheric processor that makes dead worlds livable, every quantum computer that manages our interstellar trade networks, all of it came from first builder ruins we found and copied. You are saying that all of our technology is based on human inventions, added Counselor Brintal of the Serenian Collective, her tentacled head swaying with distress. That we have been living in houses built by their ancestors for millions of years. War Marshal Corvin slammed his armored fist onto his council seat. Even if this is true, these modern humans know nothing about their heritage. They are weak and divided. They have no star fleet, no advanced weapons. They cannot possibly threaten us. But Keeper Soul and shook her ancient head. The records speak of buried fleets containing planet-sized warships, each one more powerful than our entire combined military forces. If the humans have truly awakened their inheritance. She did not need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the chamber understood what she meant. Within hours, emergency fleets were being assembled across the galaxy. Some species, like the peaceful Serenians, prepared diplomatic missions to make contact with humanity and hopefully form alliances. Others, particularly the militaristic hegemony, began gathering their most powerful warships for a preemptive strike. The galaxy that had known humans only as primitive newcomers now faced a terrifying possibility. Humanity might not be newcomers at all. They might be the original architects of galactic civilization, finally awakening to reclaim their birthright. And no one knew what that would mean for the rest of them. Captain Yoon Jae-min stood on the bridge of Earth's primary orbital defense station, staring at the holographic display that showed their solar system. What he saw there would have been impossible to believe just months ago. Dozens of alien ships were approaching from different directions, their designs unlike anything humans had ever imagined. "Captain, we have 3 more contact groups entering the outer system," reported Communications Officer Lee Soo-jin, her voice steady despite the unprecedented situation. "The computer is having trouble identifying all the different ship types." Jaemin nodded grimly. In the 2 weeks since news of humanity's awakened ships had spread across the galaxy, Earth had become the most watched planet in known space. Every major alien civilization seemed to want a closer look at the species they had dismissed as primitives for so long. "What about their intentions?" he asked, moving to stand behind Soo-jin's console. "Can we tell which ones are friendly?" "Some of them are definitely here for peaceful contact," she replied, highlighting several ship groups on the display. "The Altarians have been transmitting greeting messages in dozens of human languages. They are requesting permission for cultural exchange and diplomatic meetings." She pointed to another group of ships approaching from a different angle. "The archive keepers are practically begging us to let them study our historical records. Their messages sound desperate, like they have been waiting their whole lives for this moment." But Jaemin's attention was focused on a much larger fleet that had taken position near the asteroid belt. These ships were clearly military vessels, bristling with weapons and arranged in aggressive battle formations. "Those are hegemony warships," Soo-jin continued, her voice becoming more tense. "Their leader, War Marshal Corvin, is demanding that we shut down all the awakened ships immediately. He says humanity cannot be trusted with first builder technology." Through the station's main viewing window, Jaemin could see one of the awakened human ships in the distance. The massive sphere was so large that it blocked out several stars, and its surface glowed with the same blue light they had first seen in the Sahara Desert. Just knowing that his ancestors had built something so incredible filled him with pride and terror at the same time. Down on Earth's surface, the discoveries continued to amaze everyone involved. Engineer Nam Jisoo had been leading exploration teams to sites around the solar system, following energy readings that led them to more buried ships. What they found was beyond anything they had dared to hope for. "We have confirmed similar vessels on Mars, Europa, Titan, and at least 12 asteroid locations," she reported during the daily briefing with Earth's leadership. "Each site contains multiple ships, and they are all coming online as we speak." Dr. Han Min-jae, who had become the primary liaison with the Guardian AI systems, stood before the hastily assembled United Nations emergency session. The representatives from every nation on Earth listened in stunned silence as he explained what they had learned from the ancient databases. We were not just another galactic civilization, he said, his voice carrying a weight of history that seemed to fill the entire assembly hall. According to the Guardian records, humanity was the founding civilization of this galaxy. Every major piece of technology that other species use today, faster than light travel, planetary shields, terraforming equipment, quantum computers, all of it was originally invented by our ancestors. A representative from the European Union raised her hand. But why do the other species not know this? Why do they think they developed these technologies themselves? Dr. Han activated a holographic display that showed galactic history spanning millions of years. When our ancestors reached the peak of their technological development, they made a choice that no other species has ever made. Instead of continuing to expand and conquer, they decided to evolve beyond physical existence entirely. The display showed the gradual withdrawal of human ships and colonies from across the galaxy, leaving behind only their technology and infrastructure. They became beings of pure consciousness and energy, Dr. Han continued. But before they made this transformation, they buried their entire technological legacy here in our solar system. They left genetic descendants, us, to eventually rediscover our inheritance. Researcher Song Daeung, who had been working directly with Guardian to translate the historical archives, added more details to the incredible story. The burial was intentional. It was designed as a test. Our ancestors knew that only when their descendants developed enough intelligence and technology to detect and awaken the sleeping ships would we be ready to inherit their legacy. As she spoke, more reports came in from around the solar system. The awakened ships were not just passive vessels waiting to be explored. They were actively defending themselves and, by extension, Earth. The defensive systems are activating automatically, reported Admiral Park Jin-woo from the Military Command Center. We are detecting weapon signatures that our instruments can barely measure. Some of these ancient weapons appear capable of destroying entire moons. At the same time, protective shields were forming around each awakened vessel. The energy fields were so advanced that they could probably withstand direct hits from exploding stars. Captain Yoon watched from his orbital station as more alien fleets arrived at the edge of the solar system. Some came seeking friendship and knowledge. Others came with fear and weapons. But all of them were learning the same shocking truth. Humanity was not a young species stumbling into galactic politics for the first time. They were the inheritors of the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known, and they were finally waking up to claim their birthright. The question now was what they would do with that inheritance, and whether the galaxy was ready for humanity's return to power. Commander Park Juno had dreamed of commanding a starship since he was a child, but he never imagined it would be anything like this. The bridge of New Genesis stretched out before him like a vast cathedral, its walls lined with instruments that his ancestors had built millions of years ago. The technology was so advanced that it responded to his thoughts as much as his words. All systems are showing green, Commander, reported his chief engineer, Kim Hyun-min. The young man had spent the last 3 months learning to operate technology that was beyond anything current human science could understand. The Guardian AI reports that we are ready for our first flight in over 3 million years. Juno nodded, trying to keep his voice steady. How does it feel to pilot a ship the size of a small planet? Before Hyun-min could answer, Navigation Officer Kim So-hyun called out from her station across the massive bridge. Commander, we have a situation. Long-range sensors are detecting a large fleet approaching from the direction of the galactic core. Juno walked over to her console, his footsteps echoing in the enormous space. Through the bridge's viewing windows, he could see Earth in the distance, looking impossibly small compared to the ship he was commanding. How large a fleet? He asked. 300 ships, sir. The computer identifies them as vessels from multiple species, but the largest group appears to be hegemony dreadnoughts. So-hyun's fingers moved quickly over her controls as she gathered more information. They are taking aggressive positions at the edge of our solar system. Communications Officer Lee Daeon suddenly turned from her station, her face pale. Commander, we are receiving a transmission from the fleet. It's coming from War Marshal Corvin of the Hegemony Forces. Put it through, Juno ordered. The bridge's main display activated, showing the armored figure of the alien military leader. Corvin's voice filled the vast space as he delivered his ultimatum. Attention primitive humans. You have awakened technology that is too dangerous for your undeveloped species to control. By order of the Galactic Council, you will immediately power down all First Builder vessels and submit to protective custody. Your ships will be turned over to more responsible civilizations for proper management. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Juno looked around at his crew, all humans who had volunteered to learn how to operate their ancestral technology. They had spent months training with the Guardian AIs, learning to interface with systems that could manipulate matter at the quantum level. "What are your orders, Commander?" asked Li Dayan quietly. Juno thought about everything they had learned over the past months. The Guardian AIs had shown them the true scope of what their ancestors had built. Humanity had not just been a galactic civilization, they had been the galactic civilization, the species that had laid the foundation for everything that came after. "Open a channel to all awakened ships in the solar system," he commanded. "And make sure this transmission reaches every monitoring station in the galaxy." As Li Dayan prepared the communication system, something incredible began happening throughout the solar system. The buried ships that had been awakening over the past months started to rise from their hiding places. On Mars, 3 massive spherical vessels broke through the red soil and lifted into space, their ancient engines creating aurora-like displays in the thin atmosphere. On Europa, ships that had been buried under miles of ice emerged and took position around Jupiter. Similar vessels rose from Titan, Ceres, and a dozen asteroid installations. Each ship was the size of a small moon, and each one dwarfed the largest vessels in the approaching Galactic Council fleet. As they moved into formation around Earth, their defensive systems activated automatically. Ancient weapon systems that had once shaped entire star systems began powering up for the first time in millions of years. Energy shields that could withstand the radiation from exploding stars formed protective barriers around each vessel. The space around Earth suddenly blazed with power signatures so strong that they overloaded sensors throughout the galaxy. "All ships report ready, Commander," announced Hyunmin, his voice filled with awe at the display of power surrounding them. Juno took a deep breath and began his response to the Galactic Council fleet. His words would be heard by every intelligent species in known space. "This is Commander Park Juno of the human vessel New Genesis. I am speaking on behalf of humanity and our awakened fleet." His voice carried clearly across the communication systems. "War Marshal Corvin, you call us primitive, but you are mistaken about who we are." He gestured toward the display showing the formation of human ships now surrounding Earth. "We are the inheritors of the first builders. We did not come to your galaxy as newcomers. You came to OURS. Every hyperspace lane your ships travel was built by our ancestors. Every world your species inhabit was prepared using our technology. Every piece of advanced equipment you depend on was originally created by humans." Through the bridge's viewing windows, Juno could see the Galactic Council fleet in the distance. The hundreds of alien warships that had seemed so threatening moments before now looked tiny and insignificant compared to the wall of awakened human vessels. "You have lived in our house for millions of years," Juno continued. "You have used our roads, our tools, and our infrastructure. And now you demand that we give up our inheritance because you fear what we might do with it." He paused, letting his words sink in across the galaxy before delivering his final statement. "We do not seek conquest or domination. But we will not be caged by guests in our own home. Humanity takes its place among the stars not as newcomers, but as the rightful architects of galactic civilization." As Juno finished speaking, New Genesis engaged its ancient engines for the first time in eons. The massive ship began moving toward the galactic core, followed by the rest of humanity's awakened fleet. The age of human return had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.